Tel Aviv is really what Israel should be. I would take the entire state of Israel and spread Tel Aviv all over it.
Tel Aviv, Tel Aviv, Tel Aviv, ים כחול, עיר בחול, תל אביב. תל אביב, את הכל תל אביב, רק אחת כמוך אני יודע.
I was born here, grew up here, and have lived and worked here for most of my 50 years. Tel Aviv was born 100 years ago, in 1909, and in my lifetime I have watched it develop into a 21st century metropolis which sits in the middle of one of the world's most volatile regions. A place that's no stranger to political turmoil and terrorism, and a city, more than any, which represents the Zionist dream. It's also a city with a great beach, 5 miles of sand and Mediterranean Sea, from the affluent beaches of the north down to Jaffa Beach in the south, where the story of Tel Aviv began. I'm going to take that 5-mile walk from north to south and have a look at Tel Aviv from its beach. Are we in Europe? Are we in the Middle East? Are we even in Israel? How do Hebrew Tel Aviv and Arab Jaffa live alongside each other? Do I live in a religious or a secular town? What's the story of Tel Aviv, and what's its future? What is the state of Tel Aviv? I'm starting my journey along the beaches of Tel Aviv here. This is a beach called the Pippers Beach, Chof Metzitzim. There's quite a strange wall painting here on the wall, right on the women's showers wall. A painting of 2 boys in their shorts peeping at the showers. Chaya, a good friend of mine, you've been coming to this beach for many, many years now. Tell me about those peeping toms on the wall.
That's how it all started here. They were really this shaky, run-down place where you can change your clothing and take a shower or so after the bath. And people will eventually pick holes
to
in
peep
the walls,
into the women's changing.
To peep into the women's changing, exactly.
We're talking about the beginning of the 70s or
60s even.
The end of the 60s.
Yeah, I was here hanging out on the beaches when I was in high school, and that's from 63 till 69.
And you were here on the beach when the war started in 67, you told me.
Yeah, it was Monday morning, and we had to go to school, of course. We were all on a waiting. And of course, instead of going to school by 8 o'clock, I was already reporting to the beach. And then we saw the aeroplanes going very low towards Gaza. Then we realized that all these aeroplanes flying so low, they were right above the water.
There's one coming right now.
Yeah,
that's not the
that's
war
the one
airplane.
going to the civilian airport that there is here, a domestic airport.
So this is in a way the crazy mix of Tel Aviv, really. You've got these
That's what
wars
it is.
and
That's what it
missiles
is.
and
Yeah,
the good
yeah.
life. And
people were, when the war started, people came down to the beach to fill bags with sand. We used to get like, I think, a lira for 10
היו כאן פעם שקמים, חולות מסביב וגם נוף. העיר תל אביב של אותם הימים, הייתה בית בודד על החוף.
Chaya's memories of sitting on the beach at the start of the Six-Day War paint a vivid picture of a city at the heart of the Middle East crisis. 40 kilometers south is the Gaza Strip. A 45-minute car ride away is Jerusalem and the West Bank. Not far north are Israeli towns on the troubled border with Lebanon. Sitting on the beach, it's easy to imagine that Tel Aviv is a state of its own, a bubble, as some Israelis call it, not really part of the wars and troubles that afflict the region. Comedian and television presenter Modi Bar-On has just made a film about the city for Israeli TV.
The conflict is alive in the city, in the border between Jaffa and Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was born out of Jaffa and then swallow it. It's like a myth story about Greek gods, yeah? The daughter that swallowed the mother. I don't think Tel Aviv is a bubble. Tel Aviv is some kind of a reflection of Israel. And you can say Israeli culture has the Jerusalem side, the holy, the serious, the important, and it's got this side, the beach, the girls on the beach, the music, the coffee, the beer. And Israeli identity moves between Jerusalem in Tel Aviv.
It's 7 o'clock on Friday, January the 18th. The news headlines this morning: there's been a dramatic escalation of the Gulf War. On the second night of Operation Desert Storm, Iraqi
Once again,
missiles
the coastal
were fired
city
at
of Tel
targets
Aviv
in
appears
both
to have been the
Israel
main
and
target.
Saudi Arabia.
Some reporters in the city say they heard several explosions.
We have taken
The American
precautions.
Defense
I go
Department
around
in
with this
Washington
gas
put out a
mask
statement
like every
saying
other
3
Israeli now.
missiles have been
We
fired
put our gas
from the
mask and we
west of
closed the door. As we closed the door, we heard several thuds quite distant.
Because the image of Tel Aviv as an international city, an unworried city, a normal city, our enemies always want to hurt Tel Aviv, because when you hurt Tel Aviv, you hurt our notion of normality.
A 100 years ago, in 1909, Tel Aviv was a city built on sand. And so it's not surprising that it's become one of the greatest beach cities in the world. But that took time. Having arrived on boats, many of which never made it, early settlers turned their backs on the sea, which represented diaspora. It was the children and grandchildren of those settlers who found fun on the beach. And if you were on Tel Aviv beach in the 60s and 70s, one person you'd have spotted most days was 60s music icon and glamour girl, Josie Katz.
I came to Tel Aviv in 1962. Tel Aviv was a different place. I spent most of my time on the beach near my house, and I raised my kids on the beach. Everything was like a kibbutz in the city. You didn't have that much to do, but get high and create.
So how would you say this flower power or the flower kids of the 60s in Tel Aviv, how did it go together with the wars, with the militaristic society?
It went. I mean, today you have a lot of anti that they don't want to go to war, they don't want to join the army, but it wasn't like that then. It was all gung-ho. I remember the 6-Day War and also Yom Kippur.
In 73.
In the 73, people were coming like flies back to Israel to join their units.
Once on a mountain, a boy had a dream. David the shepherd asleep by a stream. Soldiers were cheering and calling his name. David left his sheep and a soldier he became. Israel.
What was your favorite song at the time?
It's hard to say a favorite. There were a few that I dislike very much.
Like what?
Yeah, Yecheskel.
Which was the biggest hit?
Yes.
El Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing, when that first came out, the radio wouldn't play it. They weren't allowed to play it because we were talking about the prophet Yecheskel.
Yeah.
And in the words, it's like he used to get stoned. And also, Chayal Shel Chocolate was banned.
He was a chocolate soldier.
Chocolate
what did the
soldier.
song talk about?
Oh, the way you're being led like cows to the slaughter. Yeah, you follow your general, you follow him, but you're being led to slaughter. One verse talks about your brother's blood seeping from. I mean, it's a very
strong song.
It's a song.
very brave
I love
to sing
it.
like that in the 70s
I sing
when
it.
Israel
I
was
sing
such
it now,
a militaristic society.
Yeah, we sang it only when we performed like at our club and we had our show. We sang Chocolate Soldier.
Gauche, droite, droite et gauche, les bataillons s'en vont. Gauche, droite, droite, gauche, laissez qu'on reviendra.
Walking south from People's Beach, continuing my trip along the seashore of Tel Aviv, and suddenly there is a wall, a fence right in the middle of the beach. In fact, the only place on that seashore that is completely secluded, surrounded with a fence. This is the separated beach, so it's called. In fact, it caters for the Orthodox religious community of Tel Aviv. Monday, Wednesday, Friday for men, Sunday, Tuesdays, Thursday for women, Saturdays, of course, it's open to all the public, as the religious people will not come here on the Sabbath. This beach is quite surprising, as opposed to what you would expect when you think that you're going into a religious Orthodox beach. Right in front of me, sitting on the sand, enjoying the sun, there's obviously a very old rabbi or religious Jew with a long white beard, with a yarmulke on his head, and that's it, and just his swimmer on. On the other side, you will see young kids without their yarmulkes, because obviously they're going into the water, so they can't wear it. looking like any other kid on that beach of Tel Aviv. One man who can tell me more about religious life here in Tel Aviv is the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, Rabbi Israel Lau.
There is a big mistake about the image of Tel Aviv as a secular city. If you ask someone, let's say in London, in Manchester, he says about Tel Aviv, I was told that Jerusalem is the holy city, Tel Aviv is secular city. I ask him, tell me, guess, how many synagogues are in Tel Aviv? 30. Can't you count more? 50. Are they 50? The answer is 544 synagogues. Tel Aviv was established 100 years ago as a Hebrew city. I can show you an announcement, a poster, undersigned by the first mayor of Tel Aviv, Mayor Dizengoff. Decision number 36, don't desecrate the Shabbat, don't press the purity and the holiness of our city. More than we kept the Sabbath kept us as a Jewish nation, undersigned Mem Dizengoff. This is the beginning of Tel Aviv.
The founding fathers of Tel Aviv had been working on a plan to leave the ancient port city of Jaffa for years before 1909. But the year 1909 has been chosen as the official founding date of Tel Aviv because of an event that took place on what is now the Rothschild Boulevard. I went there with historian and journalist Ilan Shchori.
Akiva Aryeh, the founder of Tel Aviv, made the lottery between the 66 family to decide who built where. And he walked to the beach and find some 66 white stone and 66 brown stone.
Pebbles from the beach,
yes, and write the names of the families on the white stone, a number of the area in the brown stone, ask for 2 young children, boys and girls, put some stone in the head.
So that's how it all started, with the lottery,
yes,
here in exactly this spot where we're standing.
Mayor Dizengoff, 2 years later, he was the mayor of Tel Aviv, find this area in the lottery.
They went out, those 70 families from Jaffa. Jaffa was a mixed city. In Tel Aviv, there was no one church or mosque. It was established as a Jewish Hebrew state. We must keep the public face of Tel Aviv to be Jewish, to be Hebrew.
Many people do see Tel Aviv as a secular city, accepting and diverse. One person who has always fought for equality and peace amongst the different communities of Tel Aviv is chair of the city council, Yael Dayan. Daughter of one of Israel's most celebrated generals, Moshe Dayan, Yael is less keen than some to promote religious law in Tel Aviv.
We are not depriving God from his or her correct place. We are dealing with human beings who are at the center. We don't deal with the Quran or the Bible the way Jerusalem does. And this is Tel Aviv. It's not like Jerusalem, where you would be afraid to drive a car in a certain neighborhood if you got there by mistake. In Tel Aviv, you wouldn't go into an area, there isn't really an area that is restricted. And if you find your way by mistake, you lose your way, and you find yourself on a Shabbat in an Orthodox area, they'll gently show you the way out. In Jerusalem, you'll get stones. But Tel Aviv is friendly to the user in a way that not many cities in the world are.
You may not get stones thrown at your car on the Sabbath in Tel Aviv, but it's a city that's no stranger to political turmoil and terrorism. Yael Dayan's office in Tel Aviv's municipality building overlooks the Kings of Israel Square, or at least that's what it used to be called.
Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin has been shot at the end of a pro-government peace rally in Tel Aviv.
Our bulletin tonight is dominated by news that the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin has been assassinated. He was shot at close range by a lone Jewish extremist at the end of a mass rally in Tel Aviv, being held
Shalom
in support of the Arab-Israeli peace process.
Vi al kol Yisrael. Vi emru
Amen. And Shalom. Haveh.
I was in the group for journalists just behind the stage.
How many people were in this
It was
demonstration?
something around 400,000. And Mr. Perez go first, and Rabin go after him.
Coming down those stairs,
In
those
those
stairs
stairs.
we're standing by.
And the murderer stay just here on the stone, just put guns from his pocket and shoot to Mr. Rabin.
On this wall here, they left part of the graffiti because what happened is the next month after is the whole streets, the whole city hall was covered with graffitis of people.
Mr. Rabin, we are so sorry.
Do you know what it says
we
there?
are crying.
There's one big word there, slicha, sorry. And look,
Friend, I remember.
friend, I remember, dream over there, a small one, and goodbye, my friend.
Israel was established in Tel Aviv. The biggest political murders happened in Tel Aviv. Arlozorov by the beach and Rabin in what is now Rabin Square. The big wave of suicide terrorism in the beginning of the 21st century. They arrived to Tel Aviv. I don't think you have to go so far as Gaza. The wound is here.
The big blow that the left-wing parties got is still not totally recovered. One day, and let's be hopeful, in Rabbin Square we'll also celebrate the peace agreement.
כל כך הרבה מילים אתה לא אומר, הייתי אוספת שאוכל להיזכר. כל כך הרבה שנים אתה מדבר.
Immediately south of the religious beach, just outside the fence that separates the religious beach from the rest of the beaches of Tel Aviv, the atmosphere couldn't be more different. Every inch of sand here is covered by bronzed, toned male bodies. This is, next to the religious beach, Tel Aviv's gay beach.
We are in a new building that was just opened a year ago. We call it the Proud Center. We want it to be open to everybody. And this is what's happening. You can see right now we're sitting here. I can see about 50% gay people, no lesbian right now, but they do come. One transgender, I'm not sure. But a lot of other people, straight people.
Adir Steiner is showing me around Tel Aviv's new gay cultural center. He looks after Tel Aviv's gay community on behalf of the city's mayor and is keen to promote Tel Aviv as a destination for international gay travelers.
It was very difficult in Israel, even thinking about bringing people here with all the problems we had with the bombing, with the confrontation with the Palestinians. So it wasn't an issue for us. Right now we have a new city council member and he's promoting bringing gays and lesbians to Tel Aviv during the gay parade. We have a lot to offer. First, we have a beautiful beach packed with hot, cute Israeli boys and girls. We have great nightlife and great weather.
But what does Israel allow Tel Aviv's chief rabbi make of gays from around the world joining forces with the city's own and marching through the streets for the annual Gay Pride Parade?
There is a daily parade, twice every day, of a parade of thousands who go to the 544 shuls, synagogues, with no hoo-ha, no music, twice a day, young and old. No one asked me about this parade. This is, in my eyes, the real Tel Aviv.
I think the big party is happening at the end when we get to the beach and then people start dancing and then the party starts until the Shabbat is coming. And this is something that Tel Aviv is different from other places in the world. We have to close the party. For me, it's okay. A lot of people get angry because they say, why do we have to stop dancing? And then I always tell them, sometimes from the stage, go home, take a shower, rest for a while, and you will continue in the parties that go on from 12 o'clock until the next day at noon. So they go to sleep and they keep on dancing all night.
Walking from north to south along Tel Aviv's beach, I have reached the halfway point of my journey. And this beach is overlooked by a small memorial garden with a link to London. Here's Modi Baron.
The London Garden was opened to symbolize the way Tel Aviv identified with bombarded London during the Blitz. It was put here because in the 40s, all the shore was full of British and Australian soldiers. You can say that what Bangkok was for the American soldiers in Vietnam, Tel Aviv was for the English soldiers.
Is that including girls and prostitutes?
This is indeed symbolized the way Tel Aviv identified with the British effort. A lonely Londoner could find in London Garden an identification behind the bushes for 2.5 Israeli pound.
This is quite a paradox, really. You're talking about the good life that the British soldiers had at that time, but at the same time, this is the spot where some of the fierce fighting between the British and the illegal immigrants coming by boats from the Holocaust.
Yes, you are right. Mullah Cohen, he was the only bar manager still throwing parties with free drinks to the Brits. It always happens in nights when a ship of illegal immigrants came. They hoped that the authorities will be too drunk to stop the ship. But, of course, the drunkenness just made them more efficient. After the war, the British people didn't feel comfortable in Tel Aviv. An English journalist writes about Tel Aviv in 1947. Imagine the happiness of a Saturday morning in Blackpool mixed with the filth of the Montmartre in Paris. This is Tel Aviv. He calls it a modern Sodom and Gomorrah. They didn't like to be here. No, they didn't.
You're never far from British history in Tel Aviv. In the early days of the city and during the British Mandate, which ended in 1948, streets were frequently renamed after important British figures. Not far from the beach, King George V Street crosses Allenby Street. He was a British general. Because of their red berets, British soldiers were known as kalaniot, a red Israeli flower. And that word became code to warn people when soldiers were near. An unlikely British soldier during World War II was one of today's best-loved and most eccentric characters in Tel Aviv. Sarah Stern owns a cafe in bohemian Schenkin Street. She joined the British Army when she was 17.
And then they sent us to Egypt. And I was there 2.5, 3 years.
And how did the British treat you?
Very good, very good. It was the best time in my life.
And this cafe was open when?
Didn't you see?
1940...
41. But it's about 50 years I'm here, I think so.
And since then it became a celebrity cafe.
Yeah.
And you're tired of it.
It's too much. Too much.
What would you like to do just to serve your local clients that you have, the writers and the bohemians?
They're coming every day.
And the nice thing that it still stayed the same.
Like Yoram Kanyuk, he used to sit here every day. Every day. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Before it gets cold, huh? Sarah Stern just left the table and left us with this wonderful toasted bagel, which is their specialty. It's been like this for the last 50 or 60 years. She got very angry because it was getting cold, so she said, "It's cold, eat first, then we'll speak later." Sarah Stern mentioned the Israeli writer Yoram Kanyuk. These days he's very ill, but still lives just around the corner. Famous for dozens of novels, he's also written extensively about Tel Aviv, the city where he was born 80 years ago. Like Sarah, Yoram joined the army when he was 17. Sarah was helping the British against the Nazis. Yoram was fighting the British on the side of the Zionists. Just after joining, he was shot in the leg by a British sergeant.
Yes, he shot me and I fell. And I saw the gun aim at me. And now he could kill me because, you know, soldiers have to kill. But I guess he felt sorry for me, so he left me because I was wounded but not killed. First he tried to kill me, and then he saved my life within 2 minutes.
Yoram's father opened the city's first museum and used to take him to Tel Aviv's early cultural events.
There were still camels from Beirut that used to go through King George. And here were people walking to the museum to hear chamber music every Saturday. the German Jews who just came in the 30s. And the camels were crossing there. They were wearing suits and papillons and all that, and walking in the sand. It was a very queer time. I remember when I was a child, I went to the opening of the Philharmonic. The Israeli Philharmonic was at the time the best Philharmonic in the world. Leonard Bernstein once told me that there never been any orchestra like that. And it was a winter, and the street was still not paved, and you had to walk in the mud. I remember walking with my father in the mud with all the suits, and it was different.
Despite Yoram Kaniuk's own role in the history of Tel Aviv, one of the things he loves most about the city is its lack of history.
Tel Aviv is the only city in the world. People died before they were born in it. In a small country like Israel, where you have holy cities all over and holy places all over, it's nice to have one place which has no history. It's 100 years old, and people here are not so well rooted. They don't want to be rooted in all the problems that are called Israel.
One part of history that Yoram Kaniuk must have noticed, he's surrounded by it, is Tel Aviv's White City.
מקצב גל ועננה בניתי עיר לי לבנה כמותם קוצפה, כמותם שוטפה, כמותם יפה.
The song White City, made famous by Israeli singer Arik Einstein. The center of Tel Aviv is home to the world's largest concentration of Bauhaus architecture. Known as the White City, its 4,000 houses were started in the late 1920s and early 1930s. Their characteristic curved balconies, clean lines and whitewashed walls seemed an obvious design choice for a hot seaside town. One of Israel's most distinguished artists, Dani Karavan, was instrumental in getting the White City recognized as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2003.
I had good relation in UNESCO, and I convinced them. And then the country has to propose Tel Aviv. And it was also not so easy to propose Tel Aviv with the fear that Arab countries and countries which are opposed to the policy of Israel will be against, but we succeed.
So Tel Aviv is now a World Heritage Site of UNESCO.
And Tel Aviv is between, I think, the 3 or the 4 cities in the world which are not ancient one, with the modern architecture of the 20th century. Through Tel Aviv and those 3 cities, we break that heritage is only till the 19th century or the 18th century. Heritage is also for the 20th century and maybe also should be taken now immediately in the 21st century.
I wouldn't say that there are a great deal of architectural masterpieces here. And from the other hand, you can find many buildings from the same period, from the same architects in the southern part of Tel Aviv. But now the municipality is about to demolish almost everything and to build about 1 million square meters of high-rises.
Sharon Rothbard, you're an architect and a writer and a Tel Avivi, and everyone is talking about the White City, and you're talking about a White City, Black City. What's the Black City?
It is all the places which are shadowed by the White City, and that includes basically Jaffa and the southern and the eastern neighborhoods of Tel Aviv. For example, with the zoning of the cars or the directions of the traffic. I mean, it is very easy to go from north to south, but not from south to north.
The backyard of Tel Aviv, or is called by many Israelis the dustbin of Israel, is here in the back of the old bus station in a street called Neve Sha'anan. The area is still very dirty. There's a lot of slums, sex shops, prostitution going on, but it's also the home of 10,000 work migrants and refugees living in Tel Aviv. This is also the location of 6 deadly suicide bombs right in this small street, Neve Sha'anan. The last one was here, in this place on 17th of April 2006. 11 people were killed and over 60 wounded. A lot of those people living here are illegal and they were afraid to go to hospital, so a lot of them were injured and then ran away to their homes, bleeding. The municipality sent out people with megaphones in different languages, Romanian, Turkish, Nepalese, just screaming, saying, go to hospitals, you will not be deported. The vibe here is so different than the vibe in Tel Aviv, but in a way, it represents what this country stands for. I mean, it is a country that was founded for immigrants, by immigrants. Walking down Neve Sha'anan Street in the south of Tel Aviv, you can see Sharon Rothbart's Point. It's a million miles away from the whitewashed walls of the Bauhaus Quarter. But does the White City really cast a shadow over the so-called Black City? Danny Caravan is adamant that the Bauhaus movement in Tel Aviv made an important architectural and intellectual statement.
White, square, cubes, little buildings, they were looking to find some simplicity in opposition to the very kind of decorative...
The ornamental
yes,
European
exactly.
kind of...
So, and they find it there. The simplicity presented also the way of living. The idealism to be simple, to be open, to be clear. Even the builders, not architects, build in this style. This became the style of Tel Aviv.
The Bauhaus style and characters like Sarah Stern, Yoram Kaniuk and Danny Caravan represent to some extent old Tel Aviv, the city in its early years. But what of Tel Aviv's contemporary culture? Walking further south along the beach, I reach a stretch of sand known as the Drummers Beach. Here, young Tel Avivis meet, smoke hookah pipes, surf and play music. It was here that I arranged to meet Mira Awad, a young Arab singer who lives in Tel Aviv and was part of the 2009 Israeli Eurovision entry, and Subliminal, a huge hip-hop star in Israel. Driving a Bentley and dripping in large gold jewelry, he may look like a gangster rapper, but holds refreshingly different views.
Listen, when it comes to American hip-hop, murder is good. You have to have a criminal record. If not, you don't have a street credibility. I think in Israel, because that all of us are already soldiers, and we learn how to shoot M16s before we had a driving license. You know, all these rappers, they're talking about their guns. We can talk about tanks, you know? I wish it would all burn and we'll have peace, and so we don't play with war.
Fire down, lick shots, fill clips and take another round. Ani Tel Aviv, living uptown, brain dead, massive, machla shel sound.
Your new album project is all dedicated to Tel Aviv.
Yeah, it's called Tel Aviv 100, and I keep on representing Tel Aviv with everything that I do. I'm the rapper from Tel Aviv. Almost in each and every one of my songs, I dedicate at least one sentence to Tel Aviv.
When you sing about Tel Aviv, what do you sing about?
For example, Tel Aviv is really jammed up when it comes to traffic, and this is one of my strongest messages towards the people in Tel Aviv. Select a leader that actually cares not about us, but about our children, about the next generation. Besides that, we have a water problem in Israel. There's a lot of water waste in Tel Aviv.
If Subliminal isn't sure about road congestion and wasting water in Tel Aviv, what does he like?
What I love so much is the fact that it's so poppin'. If it's movies, fashion, music, studios, the modern stuff, it's coming from Tel Aviv.
If you want to make it, you have to come to Tel Aviv.
If you want to make it big, you got to come to Tel Aviv, yeah.
ما حكينا كلمة كل الطريق شو أصلاً بعد في
One artist who did that was the Arab-Israeli actress and musician Mira Awad, who left her small village in the Galilee for Tel Aviv.
In the beginning it was hard because coming from the village and trying to make my way into the small bohemian group of Tel Aviv, who are the artists, or the people who work in the music business and the movie business, was really hard because I was faced with these categorizations. You know, okay, this is the Arab actress, and I hated that. I wanted to be the actress or the musician, or so I started out by hating it, ended up by using it to use where I come from in order to convey a different message, I would say.
So young Israelis from many different backgrounds flock to Tel Aviv, a creative bubble and a lot of fun.
Tel Aviv is an island of escapism. There's no denying of that. Of course, inside all of this escapism, some people are active and they have a lot of activities of humanitarian type, for equal rights, for animals, for women, for two states, for two nations. So you have all these people who are very active. On the other hand, yeah, it's an escapist city.
Most people that live here would agree that they kind of ignore
most things around and they try to really concentrate on themselves. So there's something, in one hand, really negative about that. On the other hand, amazing, because it creates this energy and there's a drive here to do things quickly. Part of the problem in Europe for me when I'm working is that I see that, yes, there is money, but life is a bit too comfortable, to really create something that is really volatile and interesting.
Volatile and interesting would be one way to describe one of Tel Aviv's liveliest music venues. Levantine 7 in the south of the city mixes up electronica, world, rock, jazz and classical music. It's co-owned by another of Tel Aviv's young musicians. Ilan Volkov is a classical conductor with a growing international profile. He explained what makes Tel Aviv a good city in which to create.
Respect is not something that's very valued here for one another. Yeah? Respect to somebody rich, forget that. He's just rich. I'm not going to respect him because he's rich. That's great for art because it creates a kind of tension. For me, there is a blending of cultures and people here that is very unique and very powerful. And you can see that in the art world here, which is exploding in the last 10 years. It really is to do with the fact that the city has an amazing energy and vibe. It's full-on stuff.
I started this trip 5 miles north of here on Piper's Beach in the northern point of Tel Aviv shore, and now we are in Jaffa Beach, the most southerly part of my journey. It's a Friday afternoon. There's a lot of people here that you can hear, many kids and families, mostly Arabs living in Jaffa. On the beach itself you can see people smoking hookah pipes, doing their own picnics with the families. As you can hear, there's people playing mud court, beach tennis. Just inland from here, there's one of the Middle East's most famous landmarks, and that's where I'm heading now. One of the most famous landmarks in Jaffa is the Abulafia Bakery. It's been here since 1879. It's been a symbol of coexistence between Arab and Jews for many years.
152 מוצרים.
150
מלחם
kinds of
גרמני,
bread,
ללחם עיראקי, לפיתה תימני.
Some German origin, English origin, Turkish origin, Arabic.
פה עובדים בערך 70...
This was the voice of Walid Abulafia, who runs the bakery here. One of the brothers is Hamis Abulafia, a very famous journalist and a radio presenter, in fact, on Tel Aviv radio. Hamis Abulafia has the only show on Israel radio in Hebrew presented by an Arab presenter.
דרך תל אביב-יפו עם חמיס אבולעפיה.
We saw and we find that the mayors of Tel Aviv invested just in Tel Aviv and forgot to invest in Jaffa. Since 1 decade after Ron Huldai elected, he invested till now 1 billion shekel, and he said that he wants to invest more. Jaffa, step by step, start to get back the crown.
Hamis, we are right now in the celebrations of 100 years for Tel Aviv, and there's a lot of money invested just north of here in celebrations and festivities. What do the people in Jaffa here feel about this 100-year
First of all, I should remind that Tel Aviv Jaffa municipality spokesman declared last week that in Jaffa port there is supposed to be festivals and celebrations and parties. It doesn't mean that people in Jaffa or the residents, Jewish and Arabs, accept that. They said that it's wasting public money. It's better if this budget directed toward education and housing. 100 million shekel, you can solve a lot of problem in Jaffa.
השכפים על המזח כבר עפו והיה משתתק ונדם זוהי יפו ילדה זוהי יפו שחודרת כמו יין רדם.
Yafo or Jaffa is its thought between 5,000 and 7,000 years old. It appears in the Bible, is possibly named after Noah's son Yefet, and is from where Jonah set sail before being swallowed by the whale. The oldest port in the world, it's where armies, rulers and immigrants have entered the Holy Land for millennia, and from where its famous oranges were exported all over the world. The scene of many a bloody battle between Jews and Arabs, these days it's a mixed city, home to Jews, Christians and Muslims. Jaffa is where the story of Tel Aviv began. The pioneering families left the ancient city and put down their roots a little north amongst the sand dunes. After considering various names, including New Jaffa, Tel Aviv, or the Hill of Spring, as it translates from the Hebrew, was chosen. In 1950, the two cities were coupled under one municipality and renamed Tel Aviv-Yafo.
Jaffa is an occupied city, and it is a city which is occupied by Tel Aviv. I would say that the whole Middle East conflict, as we see it today, started in a street fight in Jaffa. If we figure out how to live together, Tel Aviv and Jaffa, maybe it will give us many ideas what to do in other places. Before getting into design questions or planning questions, there are some political questions which has to do with the principle of living together and trying to rule the city together.
Jaffa is not a lonely city. She is connected to Tel Aviv. If the economic situation in Tel Aviv good, I think that it's going to be also good in Jaffa.
They may be connected and have one name, but Tel Aviv and Jaffa remain two very different cities. Their respective histories are so closely related that whatever the next 100 years hold for the youthful Tel Aviv, a happy and peaceful coexistence with its much older relative is surely the key.
The future of Tel Aviv is dependent heavily upon the future of Israel. If we talked about the two poles, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, which pole will it choose? If we will choose the Jerusalem side with the old wall and the new wall and the conflict and the religion, then this is the future.
There are 900 business in Tel Aviv today. 900 business. Ask for kashrut certificates means there is a demand for kosher. This is not a secular city.
Who is in charge? Is God upstairs or the mayor? Is the court of the Supreme Court setting the rules, or is it something that was written thousands of years ago?
I mean, if one day there will be a war between the territories, settlements, and Israel, it will be Tel Aviv against them. It's two different cultures, two different people, two different mentalities.
Tel Aviv, Tel Aviv, Tel Aviv, ים כחול, עיר בחול, תל אביב, תל אביב, את הכל תל אביב, רק אחת כמוך אני יודע.
But it's different, Tel Aviv, it's different. I've been in Paris, I've been in London, I've been in the States, LA, New York. This is my place.
Tel Aviv is not an island, it's the island. Everything is happening in Tel Aviv.
This is something to celebrate, really. I think it is the most open city in the world.
This place, it's a very beautiful place, and it could be one of the best places in the world in the future. And that's what we hope for.
Tel Aviv. I live here for 79 years. There's something very vivid and very much alive in this place. Creativity and fun. So that's it.
ים כחול, עיר בחול, תל אביב, תל אביב, את הכל תל אביב, רק אחת כמוך אני יודע.